Okay. I think we're gonna start. Let me make this bigger so that I'll see it. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Zarazúa, and I work at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. Welcome to the conference. If this is the first session that you attend, and if you had already been attending since this morning, thank you so much for coming to this session. This is gonna be a session in we have 5-minute share out presentations, and the topic of this session is self-assessment. We're going to have 4 presenters today, and I will introduce you, when you're going to start your presentation, and then we're going to have questions at the end. We're going to have about 15 minutes for questions. Now, the first presenter today is María Datel, and she teaches at Boston University in Boston. She's going to be presenting, the title of her presentation is Utilizing Self-Assessment and Rubrics in Student-Led Interviews. So, Maria, please go ahead and you can share your screen. You have 5 minutes.
I think you have to stop sharing yours first.
Go ahead.
Now, yeah. Okay, let me go ahead and share my presentation on utilizing self-assessment, rubrics, and student-led interview. My name is María Datel. I teach Spanish at Boston University, and I'm so happy to be here learning with you today. I started hosting online interviews in my 300 level classes during the pandemic, which proved to be highly successful and became a highlight of the semester for most of my students. So I decided to keep doing this when we went back in person again. And although it's not as exciting as in-person interview, the significant advantage is the ability to invite speakers globally and using course engagement grants, which are relatively easy to get at my institution. So initially, I led the interview myself, but later delegated all responsibilities to students because they were so engaged and invested in the process. Student-led interviews in second language learning can be particularly beneficial in the development of pragmatics. Interview involve social pragmatics, so including politeness strategies, turn-taking, and managing the conversational flow. And there are other reasons why student-led interviews can enhance pragmatic skills. These interviews mirrors real-life conversational situations where individuals must navigate social norms and expectations. Students are exposed to authentic language input from interviewees, and this contributes to a more realistic and diverse learning experience. Interviews often involve discussions about personal experiences, opinions, cultural backgrounds, so they foster cultural awareness and sensitivity in language use. This was particularly important last semester in my class that was on indigenous perspective on global issues. So students really needed to know the cultural background of each invited speakers. And students also learn to adapt their language use based on the responses from the interviewees. They have to choose between formal, informal language, expressions, and in this dynamic setting of an interview, students also face unexpected challenges, requiring them to think on their feet and use language creatively to navigate those challenges. Also, taking leadership role in interviews can increase, and in fact, it really increased in this situation in my classes, motivation to communicate effectively as they have a sense of the ownership over the interaction. And if the students were conducting this interview, it only made sense that they also assess their own work. So, and rubrics can be a powerful self-assessment tool if teachers disconnect them from grades and provide students with time and support to revise their work. And in this particular case of the interviews, revise it to understand how to do better in the next interview. So I wanted to disconnect the joy of the interview with any idea of grading, of a letter, of a number. So the first step was to explaining to the students the difference between self-assessment and self-evaluation. So self-assessment involves students reflecting on their own work, assessing how well it aligns with the specific goals and criteria, making revisions. Is a formative process aimed to improve performance. So on the other hand, self-evaluation is summative. Students have to assign a grade to their own work. And I didn't want to do this, as I said before, I didn't want to spoil, in a sense, the learning that was happening in this interview. Even when the activity is not graded, it's necessary to set clear expectations. In the case of these interviews, without expectations, the interview will go wrong. The invited speaker won't feel really well in this interaction. So always the expectations for task or performance should be clearly articulated by the teacher, students, or both. And in this case, the students created their own rubrics in the classroom. So if they create a rubric, they also own the expectations, and it proved to be super successful in my classroom. So I want to share with you one simple rubric made by my students, and while doing it, they were preparing for a successful experience. So you can see
30
here,
seconds, Maria.
Okay, you can see here that they decided on 4 categories, preparing in advance the questions they made during the interview, follow-up questions, and politeness was a big category, and 4 performances, excellent, very good, and it could do better. And if you can see, they use some humor here. Did I have to share them on Padlet? Did I thank her? I don't remember well. So to finish this, I want to add that the last part, comments, I added this part because I wanted them to produce a paragraph so I could give them my, my feedback. But this is their work. They did this in Spanish and I translated it for this share out. So thank you so much. This is my email address instead you want to connect after the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maria. Hey, everybody, please try to take note of your questions for the 4 presenters, and we'll ask the questions at the end. Also, the 4 presenters, please do not, at the end, close the breakout room. Just leave the breakout room with the blue button that is down there. I got instructions about that. Okay. And now, let me. Our next presenter is Valerie O'Brien, that comes to us from the University of Illinois Laboratory High School in Urbana, Illinois. He's going to be presenting to us a participation self-assessment for increasing engagement and student-teacher trust. Valerie, welcome, and thank you so much for presenting for us. Go ahead.
Thank you, David. Let me just share my screen.
Very good.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this panel. Thank you to David and all the other organizers for the opportunity for this wonderful conversation today. As David shared, I'm an English literature and composition teacher at the University of Illinois Laboratory High School. And this year, my department began a collective experiment in ungrading, which has led me to revise many of my grading practices for the freshman and upper level classes that I teach. While much of the work on ungrading I've encountered focuses on alternative assessment for assignments like essays and creative projects, I wanted to briefly share today how I'm also using ungrading strategies to assess students' participation in my classes this year. So some of you may be asking why assess participation at all, since some advocates of alternative and equity-focused assessment recommend against assigning credit for student participation. For example, in grading for equity, Joe Feldman contends that participation shouldn't be graded because it's behavioral rather than academic, and because students' identities and environments may affect their ability to participate. However, abundant research has shown that active participation in classes increases student learning, And further, as a teacher, I feel that broad participation in class discussions and activities benefits the class as a whole by introducing many different perspectives on the material. So it creates an environment where students are able to learn from one another more effectively. And moreover, as long as ungrading practices ultimately need to translate into a letter grade to adhere to school policies, as they currently do at my school, I feel that it's important to include participation in a student's overall class grade to reflect these essential formative learning activities that students are doing. So this year, my department-wide ungrading initiative has pushed me to rethink student assessment in every aspect of my class and to apply my department's experiments in ungrading to participation. I developed a self-assessment form that students completed at the end of both quarters in fall 2023 to reflect on their participation. So objective quantitative questions on my form ask about the frequency of desired forms of participation, such as contributing to class discussions and note-taking, as well as forms of disengagement, including cell phone use and being off task in small groups. And then subjective or qualitative questions invite students to reflect on their experience as class participants. For example, I ask, how do you feel your participation this quarter has compared to your participation last quarter? And also, what aspects of your class participation are you proud of? Well, I've been really pleasantly surprised by the outcomes of this participation self-assessment form after just using it for a semester in both freshman and upper level classes. I found that the participation self-assessment forms help to promote dialogue between myself and students. They clarify expectations about participation. They allow students to self-report forms of participation that might not be totally visible to me because I'm in another part of the room or because there's something going on with a student, like in their notebook, that I just happen to not observe. And I found that they just generally increase student engagement overall. In their participation self-assessments, students have been candid about their experiences in our class. In response to the question, what aspects of class participation have you struggled with? Students shared responses such as, I struggled with not fidgeting during classes. I was distracting to myself and others around me when I would mess with my pencils or things like that. I would like to not fidget as much next semester, or I would like to focus the fidgeting down into one thing, such as taking notes or drawing. Other students revealed that they second-guess themselves constantly, and they worry about looking stupid when talking to the class. These are common and expected concerns, but I found that it's been really helpful for me to have greater insight into which students are struggling the most with these feelings so that I can communicate with them more openly about their worries and celebrate their growth over the course of the year. Participation self-assessments have also promoted goal setting and self-reflection. My evidence right now is only anecdotal, but I noticed significant change in the participation level of several students who, at the end of quarter one, recognized that their level of participation didn't live up to their full potential. Comparing second and first quarter participation, students shared responses like, I feel like I was way more on task this quarter than last quarter. I raised my hand a lot more and contributed to most class discussions.
30 seconds, Valerie.
At the end of first quarter, one student set a goal to read aloud more often than in their second quarter assessment. They acknowledged having met this goal and expressed pride in their growth. So this semester, I'll be experimenting further with participation self-assessment by incorporating more frequent single question participation check-ins periodically throughout the quarter. And I look forward to hearing your ideas and responses in the Q&A. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, please keep writing those questions and we'll take a look at them at the end. Now we have our third presenter. Sorry. And then now we have Óscar Perea Rodríguez from the University of San Francisco. And the title of his presentation is Self-Evaluation Grades, Method to Incentivize Students. Thank you, Óscar, and go ahead.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much, David, for your kind presentation introduction. And I would like also to thank my very good friend, Lori Mesrobian, for a kind invitation to join this panel. Actually, what I did is very, very similar to what Valerie has just explained. And if you could see I'm going to show you my evaluation form, and you can clearly perceive that some of the questions basically are the same that Valerie asked, and specifically talking about engagements, etc. So it's very simple. I decided to use the Google form for two main reasons. The first one is that students are absolutely used to make a better use of these forms. And the second reason is personal, because at the end, you are not only to perceive the individual response, but also you can select the group so that you can have a clear perception in a very graphic way. You can just watch the charts, and they are showing if they are thinking about that, if they have solved their doubts during the presentations, or if they fall more or less inclined to talk and to speak more than as long as the weeks go by. Sometimes they feel a little bit less engaged in the classroom, so that you can measure very well and with a simple site, as you can see. So the student performance evaluation, I decided to use them during the pandemic, because in my opinion, the pandemic was really a turning point in terms of putting measures to self-evaluate the students. And since my experience in the University of San Francisco, I think that during the pandemic, the self-evaluation forms, they worked really well. Students felt the need of self-assessing themselves, and I think that they were really, really conscious about the specific and the dangerous moment that we all endured, and therefore they took a lot of considerations in the challenges faced during the online instructions. So for that part, my experience and regarding the self-evaluation forms was extremely positive, and the reward for the students was achieving the 25% of the final grade. We have only 4 activities, and the 25% was the self-assessment that they did. And my commitment at the beginning of the course was very clear. I specifically said, and I mentioned several times, that if that was the grade the student decided for himself or herself, for me it was fine. I was not going to come back and double check if they were actually interacting with me or with other classmates more than 6 times. If they perceived themselves that they were participating, from my perspective as an instructor, that was absolutely okay. So I think that this was a big part of the success achieved by this form, because the students showed that they have mutual confidence. They trusted me as much as I trusted them, and was the most important part of the Google form, building the mutual trust between instructors and students. Nevertheless, I regret to say that aside from the pandemic, once I attempted to put the same form into circulation with the normal interaction in normal instruction classes, the experience hasn't been positive. Quite the opposite. Most of the students, they just fill out the form with the regular blah, 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 and they put the grade that they think they all deserve is 100. Which means that, in my opinion, what we need to do, and this is the main reason for me to be here participating today, I'm more willing to listen than offering my own experience. My experience is very clear. It worked very well during the pandemic, and it is not working well now that we have returned to the normal interaction. So basically, my perception is I'm extremely, extremely keen to listen to what other instructors like myself has to say in this regard, because grades nowadays, in my perception, it's a clear challenge and it's a clear obstacle to keep improving our society, because the students, they just perceive as a goal that must be taken at all cost, and it seems that they don't make this self-reflection, which was useful during the pandemic, and they were so willing to do that in those times. But other than that, unfortunately, I must say that the very same form with more or less the same level of students in regular classes, in regular instruction, is not working. And well, that's all that I have to offer to you all. And one more time, and unfortunately, I can't be here for for the questions and answers, because I have class at the other in the classes at the other side of the campus. It's going to take me like 15 minutes worth. So if any one of you have any question related to specific the use of this, I am extremely willing to share the form with anyone that if you think that is important and you want to take a look to the form, please do let me know, and I will be so happy to share it with you. And that's all that I have to say. One more time, thanks to David, thanks to Lori, and thanks to the rest of you all. And I am extremely helpful. I'm extremely happy of being here, just listening to what all the staff saying. All of the concepts and all of the things that you are saying, they are creating a very good impression in me. So that how can we solve this issue that we are facing nowadays? So thanks again, and have a wonderful end of the conference.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe he's having some technical difficulties. Thank you, Óscar, and I will go ahead and introduce Xiomara. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Xiomara Feliberty-Casiano from Harvard University, who will be talking about leveled self-assessments in the AI era.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and happy to be here and sharing and listening to all your ideas. I'm going to be sharing my screen right now, and I just titled this very simple presentation, Levels of Self-Assessments in AI Era, or leveling self-assessments in this moment. My name is Xiomara, as I mentioned. I'm a preceptor in Spanish at the Department of Romance Languages here at Harvard University. And oops, sorry. I'm going to be talking about Spanish 15. It's a very specific course that I was teaching last semester in a specific. Is an intensive course of one semester that compiles 2 different semesters in one, combines, sorry. And
I'm sorry for it. I got kicked out of the room. Please go ahead.
Don't worry, David.
Xiomara, keep going.
Thank you, don't worry. So Spanish 15 is a very intensive course, and we meet 5 days a week at 9 in the morning. So it was a high stake for me to have different approaches and different kind of activities and tasks in order to engage students. Mostly thinking about language generators used in the classrooms. So when I was thinking about what to incorporate in this different task for the classroom, I was thinking in 3 different considerations: process versus product, self-assessment, and student-friendly rubrics. When I was listening to all the workshops and mentorship received from the Box Center, they talked about how important it is to highlight the value of the process, thinking about this moment in a specific, in which the students are going to find the results and the products immediately using language generators. So I started using these very simple rubrics and tasks, and I wanted them to see and track their weekly or bi-weekly growth by thinking, what can I do today? What can I do the next time that I am going to be assessing or my writing or my listening skills or any kind of the language domains. This is the final result of the evaluations. So the evaluations, the students had very positive feedback for the course and the overall section. And another survey that I was doing at the end of the semester, these were some of the comments. Like they thought they were able to improve their language production in lowering their stress. And this one is interesting. Like he thought, or that person thought, he was overcoming the idea that was not that he was not learning fast enough. And that's something that we need to pay attention during this moment in which technologies are so important, so imminent, and so present in their lives. They were willing to try new structures and take more risks.
Xiomara,
They were
20 seconds.
20 seconds, perfect. So the learning process was more evident thinking about this level rubrics. So in the future, I'm going to try to continue doing this in a more specific way, trying to gather more data in an empirical approach and designing more student-friendly rubrics so I can share and receive more ideas. And I want to empower students to think about the process and not the final result of, I know the language. I want to think about how I'm learning and what I need to do in order to improve the domains that I want to improve in the future. So thank you very